Kennedy's Corner. Master Podcast Pontificator.
Welcome to Kennedy's Corner. It's a safe space for Ferris Kennedy to emote, erupt, weep, plead, and laugh like a deranged hyena, uninterrupted by a jabbering, Dr. Clark. You're going to hear a free flow of ideas, insights, provocations, and delusions from a damaged man on the front lines, often beaten but never defeated. This segment has the tagline, Uncensored Rock Revelations from the Mind of Kennedy. That means you are plugging into a main artery. Anything goes, and here's the master podcast pontificator himself, Mr. Ferris Kennedy.
Thank you, my good friend Dr. Clark, and in the words of the legend Eazy-E, you're about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Whoa.
Here we are. So, as for the second episode of Kennedy's Corner, some of you have heard the first one, and you know that I have a true passion and love for the band, the Foo Fighters. But with many good things that we all tend to love, learn, and appreciate, there's always something before that helped us get to where we are.
So true.
So, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah.
The men behind Nirvana.
Excellent.
When it comes to Nirvana, we always talk about the trio of Kurt, Chris, and Dave. We fail to realize that there were a few other members who helped get Nirvana their legacy. Just like the Beatles, people forget that it wasn't just a Fab Four of John, Paul, George, and Ringo. There was also Pete Best, Sue Sutcliffe, John Hutchison. Also some notables to help record some of their songs behind the scenes were Eric Clapton, Charlie Watts, Jeff Lynne, and Billy Preston, who helped extend their career with an extra album. Now, before we let your mind go into overdrive, Nirvana had a nice list just as extensive as the Beatles. There was Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, Jason Everman, Dale Crover, Chad Channing, Dave Grohl, and Pat Smear, who ended up being their touring guitarist. The notables on their end were Kurt Kirkwood and Chris Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets. If we are to do the same comparisons on both bands, we are looking at the Fab Seven with some extra help, just like the Beatles, who had hits and covered Twist and Shout by the Isley Brothers. Nirvana had hits and covered The Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie. This is becoming a reboot 30 plus years later. Most people think I am crazy that I am to compare Nirvana to the Beatles, how they have both accomplished so much in a limited time frame. I agree the times were different in both eras. The Beatles were freaks of nature in recording 20 studio albums in 8 years. No, I'm just kidding. And Nirvana recording 5 in 7 years. Now, the Beatles ended because egos overcame their success and friendship, and a little help from Yoko Ono, contributing to the breakup of the band, as rumors were told. Nirvana ended as one of their members passed away. Even with Courtney Love in the picture, she would have never broken up the band, and Love actually had talent, which Yoko did not. There are classic rock articles that have gone and said the classic rock era started with the Beatles and ended with Nirvana. In my opinion, this is just the beginning of many discussions. Now let's talk about the members of Nirvana. The first one is Jason Everman. Throughout the history of rock music, there have been several tough luck members of renowned bands who've exited groups just before their big breakthrough. The best known example being the Beatles' Pete Best. In the modern era, such a figure would have to be the bassist guitarist Jason Everman, who was briefly a member of what would become two of the 90s biggest bands, Nirvana and Soundgarden. Now, before we classify this man as a Pete Best category, he was also a soldier for the U.S. Army, a Sergeant First Class, 2nd Ranger Battalion Special Forces, 3rd Special Forces Group Airborne, fought in the War of Afghanistan and Iraq, served his country from 1994 to 2006, and received the Combat Infantryman Badge. Now, Everman was a guitarist and bassist. He contributed to the album Bleach as a second guitarist. And he appeared on the cover and was later mentioned in the liner notes of the re-release of Bleach, and it was also the one who covered the $600 recording cost for the album.
Interesting guy.
Yeah, Everman, who is an Alaska native, did the bass line for Soundgarden on their rendition of the Beatles' Come Together, which appeared on their EP Loudest Love, released in 1990. Everman, who was born October 10, 1967, has been associated with acts like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Old, Lady Drivers, Mind Funk, Stone Crow, and Silence and Light. He was active from 89 to 1994. The next member we have is Dale Crover, born October 23, 67, in Aberdeen, Washington. He had the distinction of playing drums for two alternative rock bands, Nirvana and the Melvins. In 2016, Rolling Stone magazine had him listed as number 69 on the top 100 drummers of all time. His technical skill and muscular attack made him a major influence on many drummers on the heavy side of the alternative and indie rock communities. Crover started playing in a tribute band to Iron Maiden called The Osbournes. Capable of playing guitar and the bass along with being a drummer, his talents got him with the Melvins. In 1984, courtesy of Buzz Osborne, the guitarist of the Osbournes, got him an opening. Still an active musician, he released a solo album in 2016 titled The Fickle Finger of Fate, where he covers the drums, bass, and guitar. Not a bad role model to open the door for his successor, Dave Grohl. Crover drummed on Nirvana's 10-song demo, recorded January 23, 1988 at Reciprocal Recording Studios in Seattle. 9 of these songs have been officially released. Floyd the Barber, Paper Cuts, and Downer, they're on Bleach. Beeswax, Downer, Hairspray Queen, Mexican Seafood, and Aero Zeppelin, Incesticide, and If You Must, and Pen Cap Chew, with The Lights Out. Throughout his career, Crover was associated with acts like Acid King, Honky Altamont, Fantomas, Fecal Matter, Hank Williams III, Melvins, Men of Porn, Nirvana, Shrine Builder, Crystal Fairy, and Off. Very illustrated band names that he has been part of. The next one we have is Chad Channing, born October 31st, 67 in Santa Rosa, California. He is the son of radio DJ Wayne Channing. Relocation was in Chad's vocabulary, as his father had to often move his family as part of the job. Chad appreciated music, and when settled on his own in Bainbridge Island, Washington, is where he formed the band Tick Dolly Roll. Before that, he was in the band Child's Play, which was formed in Baltimore, Maryland. How did Chad hold a spot for Nirvana? It came after the Tick Dolly Roll radio broadcast. The duo of Cobain and Novoselic heard his drum talents. One of Channing's first performances with the band occurred at a small party at Novoselic's mother's house. It was the Cobain-Novoselic Channing lineup that appeared on Nirvana's first ever release in 1988, Love Buzz, with Big Cheese, and embarked on the group's first ever national tour around this time. They added Jason Everman as a second guitarist, and this is when they recorded the album Bleach. Not long after an invitation to allow Channing more songwriting opportunities failed to pan out, the drummer lost interest in the band, and around that time, the 4-track Blue EP surfaced in 1989. Channing had exited. Before Channing left, he demoed several tracks that would later appear on Nevermind, In Bloom, Breed, Lithium, and Stay Away. Additionally, Chad would appear on future Nirvana Rarities compilations, including 1993's Incesticide, on which Channing earned a co-song writing credit for the popular track Sliver. His associated acts included Child's Play, Nirvana, Stone Crow, Red Band, East of the Equator, Tick Dolly Roll, Mind Circus, The Methodists, Fire Ants, Before Cars. Pat Smear, born August 5th, 59, in California, Los Angeles, known as the guitarist for the punk rock band The Germs, one of the most influential pop groups to emerge from LA's underground scene. Things were going well until the lead singer Darby Crash died of a heroin overdose in 1980. The band's existence was over. Keeping busy with some TV roles, Smear released his first solo album, Ruth and Smear, on SST Records in 87. He recorded the follow-up, So You Fell in Love with a Musician, in 1992. A year later, he was asked by the Red Hot Chili Peppers to join them in replacing John Frusciante, who had just left. He turned down the role and ended up as a touring guitarist as a member of Nirvana, establishing a close friendship with Cobain and his wife Courtney Love. Smear briefly joined Grohl's band The Foo Fighters, playing on the group's 1997 album The Color and the Shape, and then came back as a permanent member of the Foo Fighters. Chris Novoselic, Born May 16, 1965, in Los Angeles, to Croatian immigrants, Novoselic and his family remained in California until '79, when they moved to the tiny logging town of Aberdeen, Washington. Novoselic is one of the politically minded musicians who is involved in politics and their differences. He sees himself as an activist. When it came to music, he was influenced by Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, Devo, the Sex Pistols, and the Ramones. The punk scene was discovered while he was on a year-long trip to Croatia. When he returned to the U.S. a year later, Novoselic saved up enough money to buy a guitar. Learned by playing along the blues records, Novoselic met Cobain through his younger brother, Robert. They had mutual friends who played for the Melvins. It took Cobain numerous attempts to convince Chris to form a band. There were a number of names being tossed out until they settled on Nirvana. Novoselic has been a long-tenured bass player. He ranks in my books as one of the best, along with the likes of Flea from the Chili Peppers, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, Melissa Auf-der-Maur from Hole, John Deacon from Queen, and Mike Watt from Firehouse and Minutemen, just to name a few. In his career, he has been associated with Nirvana, Eyes Adrift, Melvins, Sweet 75, Flipper, No WTO Combo, the Skinny Puffs, Sky Cries Mary, Aya, Giants in the Trees, and the Foo Fighters. His bass skills are always wanted and welcomed. Humble in his own way, he can pick and choose where he wants to go. Obviously, he helps the Foo Fighters when called upon, but there is a little friendship in that band. As being an activist and being politically minded, while with Nirvana, Novoselic helped arrange a 1993 benefit show at the Cow Palace in San Francisco that benefited Bosnian rape victims. After Nirvana, Novoselic organized Jam Pack, Joint Artists and Music Promotions Political Actions Committee. So now we're going to talk about Dave Grohl. Born on January 14, 1969 in Warren, Ohio. While he grew up in Washington, D.C., teaching himself to play drums and guitar, his early influences were Led Zeppelin, Kiss, Motorhead, Black Sabbath, Black Flag, The Germs, Bad Brains, and The Stooges. Holy cow. There's some good bands in there. Some good bands. He joined his first real band, independent DC punkers, Scream, and toured the world as their drummer. After Scream broke up in the late 80s, Grohl relocated to Seattle and tried out for a little-known band that had a drum vacancy, Nirvana. Immediately after Grohl joined the group, Cobain presented the band with the songs that would appear on the group's major label debut, the 1991 classic Nevermind, which should be in your essential albums for vinyl, by the way. 1993's In Utero, again, put that one in your essentials. Grohl was allowed to contribute some of his own songwriting when he earned a co-writing credit for the heavy riff rocker Scentless Apprentice, and also recorded an original song, the quietly melodic Marigold, which would appear as a B-side on the British All Apology single. Multi-instrumentalist and founder, frontman, and lead vocalist for the Foo Fighters, Grohl was the longest-serving drummer for Nirvana from 1990 to 1994. Before that, he drummed for Scream, was 17 when he first started drumming. He has written and produced all the music on the debut album of Foo Fighters, has also been part of the supergroup Them Crooked Vultures as a drummer and singer-songwriter, has made Taylor Hawkins, who was a drummer up until his passing in 2022 for the Foo Fighters. In 2018, Grohl released a 23-minute instrumental musical piece. Oh, Lord, wow. Talk about a long track of him playing the drums, bass guitar, and the keys. He is by far the most talented musician whose roots are drums, and also a Grammy Award winner 4 times with Foo Fighters, and has been inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014 for his work with Nirvana, and actually has been inducted, I believe, with the Foo Fighters. Yeah. I think they have in there. Considering he sits on the board of governors, it's kind of interesting on that one. I know. Yeah. Conflict out of it. Now we come to the left-handed genius who helped create the Seattle sound.
Well, most geniuses are left-handed.
Not Jimi Hendrix and not Ian Clarke.
Okay.
Kurt Cobain. February 20th, 1967, that's when he was born in Aberdeen, Washington. Being a hyperactive child from the age of 7 onwards and having parents that were divorced, he ended up living with relatives, which inspired the smash hit Sliver. As a gifted individual, he learned to play the guitar. Being left-handed, he used a right-handed guitar, flipped the other way, and playing the strings from bottom up. His musical influences were the Beatles, the Monkees, Kiss, Black Sabbath, the Sex Pistols, and the Clash. He also was a roadie for the Seattle group called the Melvins. In 1986, the group Nirvana was formed with Cobain on vocals and guitar, Novoselic on bass guitar, and various drummers. Their first album, Bleach, was released in '89. In 1991, they added a permanent drummer, Dave Grohl. They produced their second album, Nevermind, which is number 25 out of 100 best-selling albums of the 90s, with the hits like Smells Like Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, and Lithium. Their popularity grew after the group made an appearance on MTV's Headbangers Ball and NBC's Saturday Night Live. Smashing instruments on stage will definitely draw some much-needed attention. The success of the band was intimidating to Cobain, who liked the intimate setting of nightclubs. But there is more money to do concerts and shows in the rock arena. In the early 1990s, Cobain began doing heavy drugs such as morphine and heroin. But in 1982, his personal life brightened as he married Courtney Love in Hawaii, and their union brought a daughter, Frances Bean. With a wife and daughter, Cobain calmed a bit, and the group released Incesticide. In 1993, the band released In Utero, their last studio recorded album. Nirvana played an MTV Unplugged concert and a concert in Munich in 1994. On April 5th, 1994, Cobain had taken his own life. He was found dead in his home. This was a sad day for many fans of music. You don't have to be a Nirvana fan to be devastated. It's just being human. I remember that day. I was at my friend's place, Brent. It was a Friday when we heard it on the news. We were preparing to go see a movie, and while Brent's dad was preparing us dinner, he was listening to the news and called us over to the TV. Over the next 2 decades, Cobain's legend only grew, thanks in part to Nirvana recordings. Their live albums, MTV Unplugged in New York and From the Muddy Banks of the Wishkah, appeared in 1984 and 1996, respectively. In 2002, a Greatest Hits album prepared. 2 years later, with The Lights Out was released. In 2015, when Brett Morgan directed the documentary Montage of Heck, the film was accompanied by the release of a soundtrack album containing home recordings and demos by Cobain. It was the first ever album to be credited to Cobain alone, and I'm happy to say that I was able to find it on vinyl. It's a nice little gem in my collection of Nirvana, which I gave to my good friend Kyle, by the way. The day that I wrote this article on the men behind Nirvana was exactly April 5th, 2020. What is the irony of me, a huge Nirvana fan, writing an article in one of the greatest bands in grunge history on the day the music died, the day the lights went out in Aberdeen?
Thanks very much. Well, we call it the day the lights went out in Aberdeen, almost, right?
Pretty well.
Good for you.
So I'd like to thank Dr. Clark for embarking on this journey with me.
Yeah, and it was great. That was Kennedy's Corner, ladies and gentlemen, and look forward for the next installment.
So have yourself a great day and tune in soon.
Bye-bye.
Kennedy's Corner. Master Podcast Pontificator.